duplex that we sold towards the end of last year that the person I bought the duplex from, I actually met on Twitter. The person I sold the duplex to actually was a person that I connected with on Twitter. And what happened was this was
Twitter is a crazy world.
tell me about it, right? So it was a lender foreclosure. Lender foreclosed on the property. It was in one of my key areas we target called Sunnyside. And so he's like, "Hey, listen, we know you invest over there. Would you buy this?" I said, "Of course I would."
Welcome to the Xplor Show, where we dive into the worlds of entrepreneurship, real estate, and motivation. Each week, we bring you inspiring conversations with people who are exploring new frontiers and shaping the business world. Thank you for tuning in. Now let's get to the show. Hey, welcome back to the Xplor Show with Scott and Ryan. Scott, how's it going, man?
Hey, Ryan, doing pretty good. How are you today?
Doing good. Can't complain.
Good. Hey, today we've got a pretty awesome guest. I'm excited about this show. We got Tyron, aka the Urban CEO.
What's going on, guys?
Hey, not much. Tyron, how you doing today?
All is well in the land of the living. All is well.
That's good. Yeah, so I'll give you a little bit of introduction, and then I'll kind of let you take it, Tyron. So Tyron, like I said, aka the Urban CEO, amazing Twitter. That's actually where we kind of linked up, was through Twitter. He works in multiple cities around the country, works on creating affordable housing solutions to meet the ever-growing need for affordable housing. Tyron specializes in acquiring and renovating highly distressed properties in the urban core, leveraging his expertise in real estate to identify opportunities that others might overlook. He's a developer, coach, and mentor. Tyron, tell us a little bit about yourself, man. Welcome to the show.
Man, that's a pretty flattering introduction. Probably can't live up to all that stuff, but my elevator pitch is, we design, build, and renovate affordable housing in inner city gentrifying communities here in Houston.
In Houston, I actually forgot to mention Houston. Sorry about that. Yeah, okay. So Houston is where you are located, and you do go to other markets, correct, or no?
Yeah, well, yeah. So just being the real estate nerd I am, I try and at least once to twice a quarter travel somewhere in the country and do what I call design reconnaissance and go and study those other markets and see what things I can learn from a design and or development perspective and bring back here to our market. In addition to that, I have a design firm where we do some consulting, design, and development work for other individuals. So through my design company is how I kind of impact other markets outside of Houston, but my sole focus and where I put our dollars is in Houston.
Got it. And talking about going to other markets and finding different designs and inspiration, that photo behind you there, tell us about that.
Yeah, so this is a duplex that we are currently probably another month or so from having permitted, that I'm building in a inner city Houston, a part of inner city Houston called Acres Home. The inspiration for this design came from a community called Bay over in Atlanta, or just outside of Atlanta. And so I went there sometime last year and was just taken aback by some of the Scandinavian influenced designs that they have in a particular section of the community called Motto. And so, as is customary for me, I'll probably take 500-600 photos, come back home, start meditating and dreaming, and I start looking for opportunities to kind of extrapolate some of that inspiration and put it into a project here. And so I had this lot that I need to design something cool for. And so, I kind of do a little bit of a design fusion. So this property probably can't see the whole thing, but doesn't have overhangs like the Scandinavian houses don't have. A real sleek and modern appeal. But then there are a couple of elements that kind of borrow from what's already in the community. So it's more of a fused design, taking inspiration from the existing architectural feel of the community, but bringing in something that's not there to kind of create a little bit something different, but also that kind of will fit and mesh with what's currently in the area.
A couple questions off of that. So you mentioned, well, first of all, you said when you travel, you're taking tons of pictures and looking at real estate. I think that's hilarious. I think all of us do that. And my fiance finds it crazy that I'm driving through neighborhoods and taking photos of random houses. So when I'm on vacation, or even just buildings. Yeah, I mean, hey, the architecture is what I love. And it's real. I mean, it's beautiful. You go to different places and get that inspiration. And the one thing that I was curious about, so have you had any kind of kickback or unacceptance of bringing a very modern design into like a urban core area?
No, I haven't. Obviously we connected on Twitter, and so it's always funny. You'll have people on platforms like that have all these opinions.
Oh,
One of my common rebuttals is own something more than an opinion.
man, I love that.
Show me your opinion in action. And generally the comments are from people that don't live in these areas. When we start constructing these homes, people within the community, put it to you like this. We bought several properties because we went out, bought a house in a community, start working on it. The people saw what we were doing and said, hey, listen, literally, at the last property I contracted we bought the house. We're buying the house next door because they saw what we did to their neighbor's house. And they said, listen, we're going to sell our house. We want you guys to have it because we want you to do something to this house like what you're doing to our neighbor's house. And so in the areas where we build and develop, these are areas where, you got a lot of derelict properties been vacant for years or have had deferred maintenance for 15, 20 years in a horrible condition and shape. And so
blighted areas for the most part.
Yeah, 100% blighted. And so what happens is when people, here, look, I'm kind of digressing, bouncing all over. Let me give it to you like this. One of the things I've found, and one of our mantras is our rentals don't look like rentals. Our affordable houses don't look like affordable housing. To me, that's an issue. You look at affordable housing, you can tell that, oh, okay, this is subsidized or this is affordable housing. My mantra is I don't want our affordables to look like affordables, quite frankly, because the people that are buying an affordable house, they want something they can have pride in. They want something, what I call the kinfolk factor. And so let's say, you guys are our cousin or whatever it is, and you come over to my house. I want something in my house that you say, man, that's a nice X, whatever that is, or I like this about your house. And so we really don't get pushed back because we're not doing anything that doesn't benefit or enhance the community. We're actually making the community look nicer and better.
Yep. No, I love that. And your own something more than an opinion, man, that is
gold.
Amazing. That is so spot on. When you let's talk a little bit more. So you said that you don't like to make your affordable housing look affordable. And I don't think a lot of people understand what that means necessarily. Could you go a little bit more into depth on how do you break that look and make it more of a unique product?
Right.
And still do it affordably.
Most certainly. So so even this duplex that's in my background is technically going to be an affordable duplex in comparison to what you would normally pay for two residents in that particular area. And so all we did is you don't look at that and think, oh, that's affordable. You look at that and think, oh, that's an interesting design, or that's different, or that's unique. And all we did is put a little bit of thought. So if you look at the green section, that is a siding that has a 6-inch reveal, whereas the tan or grayish looking siding has an 8-inch reveal. So we had to buy siding. You know what I mean? We didn't necessarily spend more money. We may have spent incrementally more on the 6-inch reveal because you're buying a little bit more siding than if you were doing all 8-inch. So basically, it's just adding a little bit of thought, right? Just a little bit more thought into the design process so that rather than just giving you a blanket facade that just is real simple and repetitious looking, we want to design something that looks just, we maybe spend incrementally an extra 2% on some of the exterior materials just to give the house a little bit different look. On the inside of the house, we're going to do things like most people in affordable houses, you're going to have a 9-foot ceiling with 36-inch cabinets. And so there's this huge gap above the cabinets. We're going to do a 42-inch cabinet shaker. They're going to do a backsplash. You got to do a backsplash. A lot of affordables don't have any backsplash, right? So they just have a little bit of a lip. We're going to do a backsplash, but then over the stove, we're going to do an accent tile. So if we're doing all subway, we'll do a chevron pattern right over the stove, or we'll do a mosaic. So yes, that's an extra 10 or 20, 30 bucks, but the impact that it's going to have to the person who's buying that house is going to cause them to have a little bit of a differentiation in their house. So we take 2 to 3 little things like that. We're going to do 1 or 2 things on the exterior. We're going to do the cabinets in the kitchen. We're going to do the accent tile, and then we're going to do soap dishes in the bathrooms, so rather than just giving you a regular walled shower, we're going to put a soap dish in there. And again, we're going to do some differentiation, whether that's a mosaic tile, whether we orient. If we're going Subway, we're going to do a chevron or a herringbone, or we're going to do something to just add just a little bit of character to the property. And, fundamentally, like I said, it may add 2 to 3% to the budget, but the impact that it has and the sellability that it creates for the product far surpasses the extra 2-3% in cost.
Yeah, one thing that I've really noticed in the last several years of investing and building and in real estate is you put a little bit of granite in, or you do exactly like what you're saying. You do a few unique things that might cost just minimal money. It's amazing how much more confidence it gives the renters, and they take care of the product a lot better most of the 100%. Time when you do that. I mean, it really does. It's a mindset shift for them.
Well, and not only that, what it does is this, what I tell investors is, well, prior to say the last year, I tell investors, enjoy this market. Make sure you're journaling, take plenty of photos and videos, because this isn't a normal market. Enjoy this right now. Now, all of a sudden, we're in a normal market. And the reason why I would tell them is, see, there are things that you're doing right now that you're not going to be able to do when we get into a normal market. And when the market shifts, you're going to have to make fundamental changes to your business model, because you got lulled into thinking this is how it normally is, and so there were people like, you could put up anything in a house and it will sell. Well, now those houses are sitting and they're trying to figure out, why aren't these houses selling? Because you're in a market now where, it's not moving as fast. And so now where people weren't paying as close attention, or they were taking anything, now they got a few more options, and they can tell that you were a little bit lazy, or you ran into design fatigue and you just did anything. Well, that house isn't selling now, or it's taking much longer to sell. So the little bit of money we spent extra to differentiate our product, we get back in terms of, whether it's a renter staying there longer or occupying it quicker, or if it's a house for sale, it's moving faster. So rather than paying an extra 1, 2, 3 months in interest carry, that house is moving, and thereby that extra money we paid or invested into the property, we're getting it back sooner as a result of having these extra finishes and things of that nature.
So having a unique value proposition is a good thing. And that's, 100%. I couldn't agree more. So a lot of these builders and just people across the board in all industries have just dumbed everything down to the absolute basic, because it's all about the money to a lot of people, and they don't care. And it's just been selling. And we're seeing the same thing here in Kansas City is, builders were building houses in any lot they could find, just buying up everything. And now a lot of that stuff's sitting if it's not in prime areas, or if the house isn't different than other properties in that subdivision. So
100%.
Yeah. So when it comes to Houston, let's just keep that example behind you. What is that? Break that down. Is that a 2-bed, 3-bed?
So yeah, this is let me see. Well, I can't get out of the picture good enough for you.
That's
guys.
all right.
Yeah,
it's
a stacked duplex. So there's it has a 1-car garage for each unit. And
is it on the back side or on the front?
2.5 back. Well, no, it's let me see here. Let me get out of the way. Weird, but yeah. So it's a stacked duplex, and there's 1 unit on the bottom, 1 unit on the top, two bedrooms, 2.5 baths, just over like 1,100 square feet.
Okay, and what does that rent for there?
That these I'm gonna sell these or get sold. So this will sell for probably 390, 395, and the person will probably rent these in that area for about 1,400, 13
each unit.
Yeah, each unit.
Okay. Wow, that's pretty good.
Are most of your builds, like the multifamilies obviously are probably geared more towards investors, and I know just from researching that you like to buy abandoned houses and fix them up. Are those flips? Are you mainly feeding like turnkeys? Like what's your goal, or does it depend?
No, these will most likely get sold to an owner occupant that's going to live in 1 unit and rent the other one. And the premise behind why duplexes are flourishing in these areas. So in this community, a brand new single family house right now is probably $350. And so so if you could, so if you could get a 2 bedroom, if a 322 is 350 or 325, but you could get a 2 bedroom for a duplex where you had 2 units for, let's just call it 400,000. Why wouldn't you buy the duplex where now
Right.
you can subsidize ownership versus having one house all to yourself and you have no way of being able to make that payment? So by us doing duplexes, it makes being able to own in these areas a little bit more affordable for people who probably couldn't afford to buy just a single family for 350 grand. So that's point number one. And point number two, our business model is mixed. Initially, over the last, say, about 2.5, 3 years ago, I said, well, everything we're going to do, we're going to keep. Then we started looking at how hot the market was, and we're like, we can't keep. We got to have some liquidation events because of just how strong the market is. And so,
Right.
generally speaking, depending on what's going on in the current market cycle and our cost basis on that property dictates whether we're going to keep the property or sell it.
Makes
Yeah,
sense.
nope, that makes complete sense, and that's one thing that we struggled with the last couple of years. Is I don't love selling properties, but with where the markets are at, it's almost irresponsible not to sell a few and continue to build. Use that cash to go build more, or do whatever else in different ways. Plus, the liquidity in real estate is tough. If you really want to continue to grow, I mean, it's a very cash heavy business up front, and a lot of people don't understand that, and they think it's all roses, and the reality is no, it is not. It takes a
No.
while to build this thing up.
Yeah, I mean, it's like cases like now, we got a ton of projects in the pipeline and in the inventory and things of that nature. So yeah, you have all this property, but and you got some cash flow for the units that are rented out, but at the same token, it's kind of, I hate to say it like this, but at times it can be from feast to famine. You get a large check, but as soon as you get that large check, you already have other deals you got to deploy it into, or deals that you have to finish. And so I guess there is a science, if you will, to having a perfect balance of units that you're maintaining versus units that you're selling to create liquidity. And not, one of the things I've had to do and tell myself. So our mantra around here is no. Whatever the deal is, you're saying no right now because you got to finish all the stuff that you have in the pipeline and what's currently on the table.
You get
But that being
overextended.
said, I put 2 contracts out. So even though our mantra is no, we're still making
That's
offers.
everybody in the real estate business. We cannot pass up a deal.
Right. Right. I'm a deal junkie, man. I'm sorry.
Same. Nope, I completely agree. So tell us a little bit about your background. How'd you get into real estate and development in general?
Yeah. So it's kind of weird, a little serendipitous story. If I look back, some of my first introductions to real estate was my sister got a Habitat home when I was in like middle school, and I remember volunteering to, you had to volunteer hours, and I remember helping frame the house, and I remember thinking to myself, wait a minute, so you got these little walls here made out of wood, and then you put a siding on it, and that's the whole house. Then on the other side, there's a little bit of insulation, then the sheetrock. That's it. Like, and it just planted the seed in my head that these things aren't complex. You could do this. So you fast forward, start living life. Back then there were infomercials and stuff like that. And I met a buddy of mine one day who's still a best friend to this day, and he's like, I want to own a mortgage company, which I didn't know what a mortgage company was at the time. This was in the late 90s. And he explained to me, okay, well, if you want to buy a house or refinance a house, these are the people that provide the financing mechanisms to do so. And so I was like, okay, if I could understand finance, I could buy, build, sell, invest anything I want. So he and I started a mortgage company around 2000 called the Mortgage Outlet, right there in the living room of his apartment. And so that was how I entered the industry. But the whole purpose was to learn financing and get to investing in housing, having rentals, one day building houses and things of that nature. So became a lender, became a broker. We started doing loans here in Houston, actually could lend all over the country. And over time, we started buying houses because we'd have a person that would respond to some marketing or call us wanting to refinance. You pull their credit, they're 4 or 5 months behind. They have a little bit of equity, but not really enough equity to probably make a substantial amount, or whatever the case may be. So we buy a house here, buy a house there, and over time we started to kind of ramp that up, if you will. And I'll never forget one day, I'm sitting there talking to someone like you or Ryan, and we're talking about your interest rate. And I'm like, okay, well, you know what, Scott, your rate's 6 3/4. And you're like, oh, it needs to be 6 1/2. And I looked at the wall and I'm thinking, why am I hacking with somebody over 25 basis points? Like, this isn't what I really wanted to do. This is a stepping stone, if you will. And so I literally remember that day as one of those days I made a mental pivot and said, okay, I'm going to start tapering off, doing more loans and stuff like that, and focusing more on investing. And so I started kind of, it's like a cruise ship. It took a while, but I started turning more into the investor direction.
That's awesome. What inspired you to focus on the affordable housing and bringing beautiful design, architectural design to the market?
And
so,
can you just what is affordable? What's your definition of affordable housing too?
I love that question.
It's a good buzzword, isn't it?
Yeah, I've been in in meetings with the city, or we've been there were a couple of times we was doing something with some programs for the White House where we're dealing with different senators in different parts.
Oh, big dog! All right.
Definition of affordable, right? And I said, well, unfortunately, I didn't go to college and study any of this stuff. I learned the stuff out in the real world, and so to me, what I found is the metrics that we use to determine what's affordable really isn't affordable. Like, me, affordable housing is the lady who works at my son's school who's in the cafeteria. Can she afford it? The guy who's the truck driver who's delivering freight, to our local stores here, can he afford it? The people who pick up the trash, like, can the average person who doesn't make, $80,000-$90,000, can they afford the house? The people within that community. When I build a house or renovate a house, is there someone from that existing community that already lives there that just wants a nicer house, or they're in a 1-bedroom, they want a 2-bedroom, or they're in a 1 and now they've had 2 kids and they want a 3? Can they afford that house? So it's not some really neat academic formula, but it's more or less understanding what does it cost to live in that community that you're impacting, and then creating a product where people from that community, and obviously people that aren't in that community as well, but can they afford that house? So like in this community where this house is, most 2-bedroom houses, where the duplex that's behind me, so you figure, like I said, this will be about 1,300 to 1,400, which is, of course, the high end of on that area. It's actually a little bit more expensive than the average 2-bedroom in that house. However, the average 2-bedroom in that neighborhood is an old shotgun house that's roughly 700 to 800 square feet, that's 50 years old, that has a window unit, doesn't have central, isn't modern, doesn't provide this quality of lifestyle. So, but when they build new construction apartments in this area, it's less than what a new construction apartment would be in that same area. And so that's why it's affordable. Is it affordable compared to the 2-bedroom house that, that you probably have 2-3 people living in? No. But is it affordable compared to the new construction that gets built in that area, that this family would either pick their current situation or this nicer new construction apartment? Then my unit is lower than that. Hence, it's more affordable. Maybe not be the most affordable, but it's more affordable than what the other options are in the marketplace.
No, I love that. And I think that's very important. And people forget that when they go through and gentrify different areas, which gentrification is good, but the problem with it is it pushes out the locals. And we see that all over the country right now, where people are going in and redoing these houses or tearing down properties or infill lots and putting up these beautiful properties. But it's kicking out the people that have lived there for 50 plus years, because now they can't afford it with property tax increases, or their house is just too poorly maintained. They can't get it caught up. So then they sell it. And where are they going?
Well, see, my issue is, I think what we do, even in the development space, and then from the consumer facing component of what we do, most people only everything is labeled as gentrification, which has a negative connotation. So the first thing is the PR department for gentrification needs to do a little bit better and presenting what gentrification truly is and educating the masses. Point number one. Point number two, our issue, in my opinion, is less about gentrification and more about the lack of affordable housing. See, displacement is happening because there's a lack of affordable housing. Like, for instance, when you go buy a Toyota, or when somebody goes and buys a Mercedes, nobody gets mad and say, oh, well, that you're making it harder for people to buy Toyotas, right? No, they don't. That's because there's an abundance of Toyotas for you to buy. The issue is we don't have enough affordable housing. We're 6 to 8 million houses behind, depending on whose math you subscribe to. So the issue isn't gentrification, because you need higher property values. Because, for instance, the community I'm from is called Fifth Ward here in Houston. The moniker for Fifth Ward for years was called the Bloody Nickel. It was a reason why it was the Bloody Nickel. It was a reason why when I was growing up, as much as I loved my community and my neighborhood, I knew at a certain point, I remember I looked up to guys who were drug dealers and gangsters, if you will. Those were the guys who ran the neighborhood. And I knew I couldn't raise my family here. As much as I love my community, I can't. Why? Because of the blight, because of the drugs, because of the lack of policing, because of the jacked up parks that we played in. Well, why are those things the case? Because Fifth Ward is also the neighborhood in Houston that had the highest concentration of tax delinquent properties. So when someone comes in and builds a nice house that increases the tax value, imagine any sane, knowledgeable person getting mad because their net worth increases. That's what happens when taxes go up and when the value of your asset goes up. But so what we need more houses on the tax rolls so that we can pay for higher quality schools, sidewalks, policing, better streets, and things of that nature. The issue is we only have new construction and very little affordable housing being developed, which then creates the displacement. And so there's no easy answers here, point number one. There's no easy answers. And then another thing that exacerbates affordable housing is our country moved away from manufacturing and service-based businesses. So when you look at who builds our houses, the majority of those people, especially on the mechanical side, plumbing, electrical, and HVAC, are older people that are retiring and they're not being replaced. So now we have a labor-constrained market whereby the people that can charge more than what they should be charging in many cases because they're overworked and they're like, okay, yeah, we'll do it, but this is what it's going to cost for us to do it. Well, that's just business 101. So you have, and then you have a lot of developers. Now we have more people coming into the space, but since the global financial crisis, a lot of developers never came back to the industry. A lot of suppliers never came back to the industry. So there is a convergence of factors that are all contributing to what we have here that creates an environment where we have a lack of affordable housing. And so again, gentrification and redeveloping a community gets a black eye, but these areas are the hood for a reason. They're blighted for a reason. So to get mad at development and progress coming, to me, you're fighting the wrong battle. You're solving for the wrong X.
Yeah, I agree with that. And one thing that I will say though is most people are very uninformed, right? 100%. And you said a couple things in your spiel there. And one thing that I don't think a lot of people understand is rooftops pay property taxes. Okay. Right. When we bring new development into these cities or into areas, what happens a lot, and it's a huge buzzword as well, in my opinion, now is TIF, tax increment financing. Cities will go out there and give incentive to developers, which you need incentives. Now, there's different ways to give incentives, but I'm a believer that you do need incentive to get people to come and invest in blighted areas, right? Or else nobody's going to do it. It makes no sense. But there's got to be a way of doing it better. I believe, especially Kansas City, we're like the poster child of TIF, because what businesses did for decades is they'd go to the Kansas City, Kansas side and get a TIF for 10 years. And as soon as that ended, they'd come to the Kansas City, Missouri side and get a TIF for 10 years. So it was a battle. Well, what it was doing is they would just pack up shop and leave and go to the next building every 10 or so years. So now that place sits vacant. Well, now it's vacant. It's getting, people are breaking into it. Things are getting vandalized, whatever else. But there's got to be a way for cities and schools and public office, like public safety, to work better together with developers on figuring out ways to finance projects. Because an example here in Kansas City in a small suburban area is what we've seen in actually several areas, the cities make their money on sales tax. So when they go give a TIF, they could care less, because really the TIF is for the property tax. So they're giving away all this money to these developers, and they're still getting their money, and that's all they want, right? Well, now the schools are running into problems because the schools get paid off of rooftops.
Right.
So when a TIF is given out, well, that's the property taxes. That's where the school makes their cut. So when we're cutting out rooftops and we're bringing in these huge apartment buildings or whatever else, but those apartments are getting a 10 or 20-year TIF, it's taking all the schools' money. Well, now your schools go down because they're trying to make things work with more students in there, but less money.
Right.
So there's got to be an incremental shift and a mindset shift across the country, in my opinion, that we've got to figure out a way to get the cities and the schools on the same page in different communities. This might just be Kansas City, but I've talked to people in other areas, and it sounds like it's pretty similar in a lot of cities. We've got to get people on the understanding of how property taxes work, how sales tax works, and what that actually impacts, so that then they can make the right decisions when they're out there voting, because most of us are voting and have no clue what's actually happening. But a lot of it comes down to real estate and development.
100%.
What they're voting on.
Yeah, I mean, financial education is huge. Again, another reason why I love Twitter, because some of the dialogues that we're having on a daily basis. But yeah, like I said, this is an onion, and there's so many levels to this thing. And I think a lot of times when it comes to solutions, there's an oversimplification of what not only the issues are, but how to solve them. And so we have to battle this front on multiple modalities. Housing is one component to it, but understanding how that relates to city finance, public finance, also understanding the component, which, is something we spend a fair amount of time, is engaging more people, specifically now talking to kids, helping them understand that you see that guy in a little, F-150 truck with some blue jeans and a t-shirt on, and you just thinking, oh man, I don't want to be him. But you don't see him. You don't realize that that's the same guy passing you up during the summer in the RV that costs $300,000. You don't realize out at the lake, that's the guy whose boat that is and has a clean F-450 that's $100,000 truck, and he and his family. You're like, man, I wonder what they do for a living. He's a doctor. No, that's my guy Eddie, who owns a carpet company, and is has 14 houses free and clear. Has a horse collection of about $400,000 worth of horses. But when you see him on Monday through Friday, he got on jeans and a t-shirt, and he's driving this little beat up truck. He's driving a clunker. So helping educate kids to help them understand that, you're not going to go to college, right? Everybody's not going to go to college. Well, there's a whole nother career path out here. But, again, that's just one more layer to this particular thing, because if we had people in these communities that not only live there, but maybe they worked and built in these communities, they wouldn't be a renter. They're going to go build them a house, live there, build housing for other people there. So there's no easy answer, point number one. The good thing is there are a lot of great people like yourself, myself, and so many others around the country that are actually trying to make strides and amends to fix this situation. So I think it's getting better, not worse, personally, is my assessment.
I would agree. It feels like it's getting worse to people that aren't in it. But
right.
In my opinion, I 100% agree with you. It is getting better because we're actually talking about it at this point versus just shoving it under the table and, okay, it is what it is. It's going to take some incremental steps to get it to where we need it to be. But the reality is you got to start somewhere. And I feel like it's really getting pushed now.
Have you done a lot of work in Fifth Ward with your upbringing? Like you said previously, you guys all looked up to, the guy with the fancy car, the drug dealers and stuff like that. And I know you have the Urban Builder School where you're teaching people kind of what to do. Sure. Do you do a lot in Fifth Ward, or have you? And then is it kind of because of your upbringing and you're wanting to be that role model for the kids out there in the neighborhood?
Sure. So about 10 years ago, I created Houston Vintage Homes, and the mission of the company is to reshape the face of inner city Houston one home at a time. And, the question that I answered succinctly that you asked earlier, Scott, was how did I get into, this particular space, affordable housing, so on and so forth. So initially I was, just doing deals anywhere in the city. If it made sense, the numbers work, boom, we'll buy it, whatever the case may be. And so as you get a little bit older, you start to want to you move from wanting to make significant income to wanting to live more of a significant life. And so I had always had an affinity for my neighborhoods and neighborhoods like it. You know, you grow up in these areas, it's insane the amount of neighborhood pride you have. I don't know what that's about, but you got all this pride in the area, but you don't even own your house. But needless to say, so you had, you know, so I always had this pride. And so, you know, about 10 years ago, I said, you know what, I want to spend, you know, the rest of my foreseeable future making neighborhoods like my neighborhood better. Because I remember as a kid, when my mom was going through the process of buying a house, and, you know, we finally got in a house. I'm like, okay, it's a cool little house, but I was like, man, it'd be so nice if they did this. Or some of those same things that we do in our houses now, I said I wanted to do. So long story short, I created Houston Vintage Homes with that premise. And to your question, yeah, it was neighborhoods like mine, 5th Ward, 3rd Ward, 2nd Ward, Independence Heights, Sunnyside, and things. These are all communities here in Houston. If we're in Kansas City, you know, over off Truce, down by Paseo before it blew up, and you know, over by Bannister Mall, all, you know, different areas.
Man, my guy does know a little bit about Kansas City.
Yeah. No, straight up. See you West Gates, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The Jay's chicken wings, you know what I mean?
Amen to that.
Yeah. Arthur Bryant, you know what I mean?
Your wife's from Kansas City, right?
Huh?
Your wife is from Kansas City?
My wife's from Kansas City, yeah.
What part?
Certainly.
Man, she's a good-looking, smart woman, I'm sure.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. There you go.
You know, one thing you said there, Tyron, was no one really, or I mean, you said you stopped thinking about the income and more so about the impact. And that's one of the sayings that I really live by is people don't remember you for the income you make. You actually get ostracized anymore for making a lot of income, which is kind of crazy to me. But you're remembered for the impact you make. And the reality is as you, not everybody, but I've come to that same realization too, is like, you know what? I don't need to make all that money on this deal or every deal. There are some deals I might go out and just try to break even on. I've even lost money on a few deals just because of what the mission of that deal in that particular area was, and trying to make that impact versus we need to make $1 on every single 10 cents we put out there. Like, no, guys, we can afford to take a little bit less here and there and make a better impact on everybody.
No, 100%. You know, when I was a mortgage broker, one of the things, and we were buying houses, I would tell people, and I would like do speaking engagements or talk to other investors. I say, you know, unfortunately, a large part of being a broker, a mortgage broker, is you got a lot of calls from people who were in distress. You know, so they weren't calling you. Well, they were calling because they wanted a lower interest rate, but that was by virtue of the situation they were in. So it wasn't like they had a 6% they wanted to refinance and go to a 5%. They were calling, hoping they could refinance, but they're 4 months behind, lost a job or something like that. And so one of the things I said is, you know, when I start providing housing, I want them to have equity day one. So I want to leave enough meat on the bone so that if life happens, they get in a compromising situation, they're a little bit better positioned based on how they started. You know, a duplex that we sold towards the end of last year, that the person I bought the duplex from, I actually met on Twitter. The person I sold the duplex to actually was a person that I connected with on Twitter. And what happened was
Twitter is a crazy world.
Tell me about it, right? So it was a lender foreclosure. Lender foreclosed on the property. It was in one of my key areas we target called Sunnyside. And so he's like, hey, listen, we know you invest over there. Would you buy this? I said, of course I would. And this place is worth about $250,000 in its current condition. And we sold it to a person I met on Twitter that helps house the homeless. And we sold it to him for $215,000. So, you know, it's $35,000 of value they had day one. Now, the irony of the matter is, now this was a nonprofit entity that served the homeless. And, you know, and I helped them understand how much value was there. Like, hey, you got over 10% of equity here. And so they started working on, I think they got their permit, they did something else. And then I guess they had an epiphany and said, yeah, we're a nonprofit, but let's go and get this profit. So they turned around and sold the property for $250,000. Which is funny. So, because I told the person I bought the property from, they were like, well, man, that wasn't cool. And I was like, well, you know, I'm not one of those people where, who am I to, I agreed to sell it to them for 215. That's what I did. Hey, I done my part. Who am I to relegate them? To, oh, well, you need to hold it. You shouldn't sell it. You shouldn't realize that gain that's there. Like, no, that's not.
Yep.
That's not my. I'm not signing up for that class. I done my part. I created value, and they extracted the value. Okay, great. That's good. That's no different than someone selling you our property, but then wanting to control when and or how we sell it or what our final disposition is.
Yeah. My coach, or not even my coach, I think it was Brian Buffini, says it well. He says, look, the matter of fact is you did the good deed when you gave them the property.
Exactly.
So the reality is once you, just like, here's a good example. When you give a homeless person $10,
right,
don't think about or don't watch where they go spend it.
Right.
The good deed was the money you gave them in hopes that they would put it into buying food or buying whatever it was.
100%.
If they go do it on something else, that's on them. You
Right.
did the good deed. Just remember that fact.
100%.
Well, and
that's a huge thing.
It's looking at the glass half full, right? If you're a lot of people, it's easy to go to the negative, but they, you gave them a deal and they screwed you over by selling it. Like, who knows? Like Scott said, maybe they took that money and put it towards something more important that helps the homeless,
where they could impact more homeless
right
people.
Exactly.
So look at it that way.
Exactly. No, 100%. And that was my perspective on it. Is that, again, that's why I do it, so that you could have that added equity. Who knows, something may have happened and they needed liquidity in order to continue to, their work. And hey, we got just $35,000 of value here. Let's extract it and keep. It's not like they sold the house and then left the nonprofit space. They're still a nonprofit. They're still impacting lives. And so who am I to try and relegate them to having impact the way that I want them to do it?
Yep. What are some of the biggest challenges you face right now in the space? We all know material costs, labor, but are there other challenges and things that you would like to see simplified?
Well, bigger picture, more of a macro picture, not necessarily micro to my situation, but it definitely impacts me tremendously. Or here, let me answer the question like this. One of the things I always get asked, especially from city officials day and age, how can we make your job easier? And the thing I tell them is, in a city like Houston, we should be able to get properties permitted way faster, especially affordable. Like, we're talking affordable housing, you should be able to get an affordable house permitted within 45 to 60 days. Every major metropolitan city should have a fast track to permitting department of some sort, because it's crazy to me. Like, new housing generates revenues for the city, like in huge chunks. So why is that a huge bottleneck for any city? If I was a mayor, that'd be one of the first things I do is, have a fast track to permitting, get projects permitted quicker, because you're going to generate fees from the permits and you're going to generate and increase your tax revenue base. So why wouldn't I do something to create an environment where those things could happen quicker? So I would love to see that happen. Then within, like, Houston doesn't have zoning, but we have some guidelines. Like, for instance, this duplex, I had enough space where this duplex is being built to make it a triplex. However, in Houston, when you go above 2 units, it's considered commercial. Although financing considers commercial everything north of 4 units.
Yeah.
So if we could be more in line with our guidelines with how financing happens, we could now start filling in that missing middle housing by providing more triplexes and fourplexes, which would also help affordable housing, because now you could have a family buy a fourplex, rent out the other 3 units, to subsidize their payment to where they maybe not even have a payment, because the rental from the 3 units covers what it costs for them to live. And so now you're changing the financial trajectory of people's lives just by virtue of changing some guidelines that, don't really benefit anyone. They're just old, archaic, and how it's always been done, but isn't necessarily meeting the needs of modern day society. So I'd love to see permitting change or get fast tracked. I'd love to see guidelines kind of change to allow us to fulfill the missing middle housing scenario that we have.
So to add on that, I get it for, new builders or maybe out of state people that don't know, but is there not a way they could do like you have a track record, you're doing things right, you're making the communities better. Is there not a way they could fast track, like, hey, we know this company,
No, Ryan. The cities are cities. They don't care. It's a matter of we do it our way. You're not going to tell us or guide us in any way. This is our way, and no one's going to get in the way of changing it.
Yeah,
It's sad.
it's like yeah, it really is, because like again, I'm on in Houston, we have a committee called Livable Places, which they are who create the guidelines for development and the rules we have to govern and things of that nature. I'm afforded the pleasure to be one of the committee members. And you know, there are different, what tends to happen is when you're trying to change stuff, you have the NIMBYism movement, not in my backyard. And unfortunately, those people,
boom.
Yeah, right. Like they, generally speaking, they're the loudest ones, right? So the people that are pro change don't even know it's happening, or it's hard to get them engaged for whatever reason. And then, but some of the people who are the NIMBYs are fairly engaged, or they know what's going on. And so they tend to create the most amount of noise and opposition of certain changes. And fundamentally what happens is people just don't like change. You know, they focus only on how their life coexists with no thought to everybody doesn't live like you. Everybody doesn't have, you know, you don't consider yourself rich, but if you're making $150,000 a year and you live in $1 million house, the person who makes $50,000 a year who wants to get $150,000 house, but you don't want that. You want affordable housing, but you don't want it nowhere near you.
Yep.
So you want it as far away from you as possible, because all you can focus on is your house going from 1 million to 2 million someday. So it's, you know, and so that's one of the issues, is that, you know, no, everybody says they want affordable, but they don't want it around them. Everybody wants these different types of housing types, but they don't want it around them. And so it's just a weird environment. But again, I think people are starting to, I can see it getting a little bit better. Again, that's the eternal optimist in me, because people are realizing that, you know what, we do want a little bit more diversity and inclusion within our communities. It makes for a better community when you have people of different lifestyles and types of living and so on and so forth. You don't want this, I don't know what to call it, but just everybody's the same, just one type of thing. No, you want a little bit of character and diversity in how you live. And so I think it's getting better. It's taken a while, but it's getting a little better.
Yeah, slowly but surely. There's a huge emphasis on it because it's gotten so bad, you know, and real estate's been such a topic the last 2-3 years because the market has run so much that now all of a sudden all the red lights and alarms are going off. Like, we've kind of ignored this and again pushed it under the table for years. Now all of a sudden there's more homeless out there. There's more people that can't afford, and they're using way more percentage of their income to pay for housing.
Right.
It can't sustain. So it's always, and that's how almost everything works in politics, is once it's already too late, now we try to solve the problem. It's like, we could have been solving this decades ago, but okay, let's go ahead and do it now.
No.
So yeah, that to me, it's absurd, and cities are not the easiest to work with, and they hate change more than anybody. I mean, they're already so far behind on all their processes compared to the general markets. It's crazy. It's government, right? They're always way behind. It just doesn't make sense to me. They have access to everything and cannot keep up with anything.
They love to preach change, though. They love to preach that they're changing and everything's getting better. And but that's just crazy that it takes that long just to get a simple permit on something that they hammer all the time. Oh, we need more affordable housing. Hey, I'm here to do it. And they throw a bunch of hurdles at you. It's ridiculous.
Right. I don't know if you heard Tyron say earlier, but this is a while ago, but I wrote it down here. He said, I work with the White House and senators. Did you hear him drop that bit of alpha?
Oh, that was
hey, not a big deal. No big deal.
No, that was just we were working. It initiated with Senator Chang over in Hawaii because they were wanting to bring more affordable housing to the to our community, and so someone here locally recommended me and our firm to be one of the consultants that they spoke with, and we're just sharing with them best practices that we were doing here in Houston, and that led into a couple other opportunities. We also worked with the Rice Kinder Institute with the affordability study and more of a kind of market update thing. And so all of those things were really cool. I mean, it's like, it reminds me of the quote from famous book that says your gift will make room for you. Again, I was like, I'll have a degree. I went to college for a semester and a half, so I ain't graduated, I quitulated, you know what I mean? But
Right. Yeah.
I just happened to have a passion for something, and I just followed it. And as a result of that, certain doors just open. And yeah, it's been a fun and interesting ride. And and the cool part for me is I've kind of operated within a little ecosystem I've created, a little comfortability space. And so I'm kind of coming out of that space a little bit more and doing some more projects that are going to have a little bit more of a catalytic effect, a little bit more larger impact. And so I'm excited about, just having more of an impact in this space in the coming days.
Going forward, what's the future look like for you?
Yeah. Pretty like
investing in Kansas City.
Yeah. What's crazy? So with my
hang on a second. No. I'm gonna cut you off right here.
Come on.
All right. You guys, the other day on Twitter, our buddy here, the Urban CEO, made a comment about appreciation. And I said, well, hang on a second, because he said there's no real appreciation out there. I don't think he's looked in Kansas City, because we got plenty of appreciation and we've got cash flow. I mean, come on, man.
I think he was saying the whole Midwest too. He's just dogging everybody.
Oh, it was the Midwest, I think.
Yeah, he's dogging all of us out here.
So Twitter is the king of identifying nuances, right? So you could say the sun's out. Oh, but wait a minute, it's raining in my neighborhood, right? So,
or it's like, hey, I'm providing this affordable house. Oh, that's not affordable.
Exactly,
Listen, that's like
exactly.
But no, I always find negative in a positive situation. It's crazy.
Sure. And there are certain so certain markets are better than others, and Kansas City is a really good market.
We're going to be doing some deals together.
Most certainly. Now when I made that statement, I was, and even some of the areas I'm going to name, we can actually identify areas in there where you can, like, to me, a good investor can always find opportunities in almost any market, because Absolutely. You can even create appreciation, because every area, regardless of where you are, there's some level of growth. And so one of my philosophies is we buy in the path of progress. So you can find the worst area in the country, and there's some progress either about to happen, or you can create an environment that makes that progress happen. So that's a caveat to that particular statement. But when you look at fundamentally areas, Cleveland, certain parts of Kansas City, certain parts of Ohio, Pennsylvania, not as to a certain degree. But I mean, there are areas within the Midwest, certain where you just don't see as much, where there's more cash flow than there is appreciation. Not that appreciation is existent, but it's definitely more of a cash flow play, just because you don't have the migration patterns and the growth that you see in certain areas in other parts of the country. So and really, what I was speaking to is I see a lot of investors. So like I have a colleague of mine I was meeting with yesterday, and I even went to Cleveland, and I'm looking, man, I could buy a fourplex for $60,000, not saying East Cleveland, to rent out for $1,600, but it's literally going to be worth $40,000 or $60,000, 5 years from now. But I fundamentally think a good investor, once you've trained your eye and you've developed a sound buy box and you understand how to identify macro and micro trends that are going to cause growth to transpire in that area, you can find growth and development or and great investing opportunities almost anywhere.
Yeah, you hit it on. Yeah, I mean, the nail on the head.
Backtracking off my statement to a certain degree.
Yeah. All right. No, I mean, to be dead honest, you aren't wrong either. The reality is we have had amazing appreciation in the last couple of years. I mean, in certain areas in Kansas City, like Prairie Village, man, they had 1%, 1.5% a month in 2021, 2022. It was crazy how fast the market was going up. But in general, the appreciation is very slow here, but you can find cash flow very well. But yeah, you're right on the spot when you say a good investor can find a deal in any market. I mean, there's always deals out there. You just got to really know what you're looking for and I mean, if you know what you're doing, you can make a deal happen.
So speaking of Kansas City, so I used to always tell my wife, I'd love every time I go to Kansas City, I hop in the car and go down Paseo and look at the old houses. And, like I love that because they're just old houses and y'all houses are even older. And so I would always tell her, man, we ought to buy a couple of houses down here. And so the last few years I've watched, so I've been married 23 years. So I've been kind of coming to Kansas City and watching. And now I'm looking at what's happening in these areas and all the new construction down there. And I'm just kicking myself because I would tell her this, 6, 7, 8, 19 years ago, like this area is going to blow up. It's going to happen. It's a period. And she's this Kansas City, this. You don't know. Over here, I'm truth. This is what was going on over here. That's 39th Street. Do you know about 39th? Let me tell you. I'm like,
great area now.
Baby. So but one of the things I loved, last time I was in Kansas City, and I was taking pictures, doing my regular real estate nerd stuff, taking pictures of houses and videos and stuff like that. And I made a post on Twitter about it, and I had someone reach out and was like, hey, if you do something in Kansas City, man, I got some capital. I love to invest in your projects. I had one of the people from the I think the vice president of the National Home Builder Association, the Kansas City branch, reached out and was like, hey, we got open arms, come on down. And I was like, wow, because one of the things I love is I always make decisions based on the personnel. And so when you have personnel to execute whatever it is you're trying to do, it makes doing things so much easier. Most people chase the opportunity. I don't chase the opportunity. I seek out and look for the right people. Once you have the right people, then you by default run to get the proper opportunity. So I say that to say, Kansas City is an area where I recognize, let me say it like this. One of my common sayings I tell people is we don't lack resources, we lack resourcefulness. Everything we need is already there, already abundantly abound around us. A lot of times we have a scotoma, part of our vision that's covered or blocked or hindered, and we don't recognize the resources that are readily available there for us. And so in Kansas City, there are a lot of resources that I have access to that I just, for whatever reason, had a scotoma, hadn't even paid attention. And last thing I'll say is so I do some mentoring and coaching to help get more minorities and more women and more just people in general into the real estate development space. And so one of my mentees who's really taken off is right there in Kansas City doing some really neat projects. They have some really neat projects in development right now. So yes, we will be doing some stuff in Kansas City.
What's his name?
Yes, sir.
Her name is Keisha Sanders.
Wow, Ryan went straight to a male. That is pathetic.
Yeah, I thought he said he. I thought he said. You're right.
Hey, delete that, Ryan, and we'll come back.
No. You know what? As a guy with 2 daughters, I should know better. And actually, last night I told a story, and where my daughter was making up a story, and she started doing a doctor voice in a male tone. Gotcha. And I corrected her. I was like, no, it's supposed to be a female doctor. So that's
right. You're trying to cover your tracks, dude. No, that ain't no.
He's trying to balance it out, right?
Yeah, he is. No, that don't work.
I'm saying it's my mistake. My mistake.
Yeah, no worries. No worries.
And to go back on what you said, resourcefulness, another fellow Twitter friend who was on our podcast this week, Yona Weiss, he starts his podcast off with your network equals your net worth. And that is exactly right. It's all about who you know. And the reality is if you know the right people, you can make big movements and big strides very quickly.
Yeah, I had a chance to speak with Yona briefly in New York at a Real Estate Trends event, which was funny.
I was one of the rejects. I didn't get invited to
that. That's crazy. It was funny that Yona had flew in from Israel, so that's what I wondered. I was like, wow. But it's funny. So right after the event, you see people tweeting different things. Oh, I didn't make it, so let's have a meeting for all the people that didn't get to meet the cut or whatever.
All the rejects.
Wow, I was like, sometimes being on Twitter reminds me of being in middle school. I'm like,
oh yeah,
come on, y'all. Like
the best part is I kept saying that, but I wasn't even really on Twitter when you guys were like trying to get on that, whatever else. I had no clue until like the week of it actually happening. I was like, oh man, this is really cool. Damn, right. I wish I could make it. I guess I'm a reject.
Yeah, exactly. I don't, it was a wonderful thing. But I think it was something he did. He just kind of did it impromptu, and I mean, even hearing his story, how he, now all of a sudden everybody's an anonymous. So I'm the Kansas City real estate guy. Everybody's a guy or a gal that with an
Yep.
anonymous account, and some avatar, some digitized avatar in their profile pic or whatever. Um, but he just taught, it was a fluke one day. He just was like, hey, just set up an account and start tweeting, and it just kind of took off. And the whole premise for being anonymous was because of the stuff, the detailed information he was sharing. And he didn't want anyone to know that was directly him, if you will. And then it just turned into this big old huge thing. And so it was cool to meet him and hear the story and how it just kind of, this was as a fluke, just kind of came to pass. And then he was, he just had a thought, well, hey, listen, let me just do a meeting with some people that I've connected with as a result of this fluke. And now other people are doing meetings all over the country. So it's kind
I
of
think it's awesome.
steamrolling, but it's cool to watch happen, because I think a lot of us are, I had been on Twitter for years, but just never really engaged. And probably a couple of years ago, I just started kind of engaging more. And most of us are kind of operating silos, right? So it's like, there may be one or two other weirdos in our market that are like us that we vibe with, but for the most part, we don't get a chance to see or talk to them every day. Well, then you go on Twitter and you finally find a community of a whole bunch of crazy other nerd and weirdos who speak the same language, weird, just like you're weird, have the same conversation. Now we're, talking and dialogue. And so it really becomes a cool place to grow, learn, network, meet other people. And then you figure out I'm not so crazy and such a, anomaly or outlier as much as I thought. There really are some other people that are out there. And so yeah, it's just cool, man. I always tell people, hey man, you should get on Twitter. And they're like, Twitter? Isn't that
Yeah, everybody. That's everybody's response.
right? Exactly, right.
Cracks me up.
Right. And I especially tell business people, I was like, listen, you have no idea. What I used to tell people is this. I said, the reason why I love Twitter is because it's the only social platform I can go on, and I literally can get to the highest level thought leaders in the world, like whether it's diversing directly with Mark Cuban or Elon Musk, or where, like, there's no other platform where you're going to be able to do that. And that's what I love about Twitter.
I agree. It is a great space, and I've made a great network. I haven't pushed near as hard as a lot of people. I'm going to really start putting more on there. But man, you have great content. I've learned so much from you, from all the different people on there. It's been amazing, and it is almost a place to go for me personally. And when you feel like you don't have anybody you could talk to about a certain situation, because they just don't understand it, or they think you're bragging, or think you're doing this, it's like, no, I just need to talk about it, or like get asking for help for things that other people I know maybe don't have any experience with. It's like I get on Twitter and man, within minutes, people are just blowing some things up. It is amazing the impact that is on there.
100%. So like, I just made a tweet earlier in the week because I was having this thought, again, you have this business and you're continuing to grow it, evolve it, massage it, right? So massaging and crafting and morphing it into whatever the next iteration is going to be. So one of my thoughts was, what's the most passive? I had met with one of my mastermind partners who's very successful here in Houston, and he doesn't live a passive life. He's very active, but he could be very passive based on the level of success he's created. And so I said, let me pose this to Twitter. And my question was, what's the closest you can get to a passive lifestyle within real estate, what asset class or whatever the case? Got some phenomenal answers and ideas. And then I had people that didn't respond, but DM me and were like, hey, thank you for asking that question. I learned so much. And that to me is what Twitter is about. You can have a thought, put that thought out there, and there'll be people with nowhere near the experience that you have that may say something that help you see something differently. People with way more experience and success that are going to add to that same commentary. And you get this, what I call intellectual gumbo, if you will. So it's just all these different ingredients and pieces that really make something that tastes great or that can be very beneficial. And there are very few places that you can have that kind of conversation. In fact, I don't know of another social media platform where you can have those kind of conversations. It just doesn't exist.
It does. And people are very open, and transparent, which is huge. I'm all about transparency. I want to help everybody succeed as much as possible. And there's so many people out there that don't see it that same way. I've met so many on the opposite side now on Twitter that are the exact same way. It's like, hey, I'll help you with whatever you need. Like, we might be competitors, but at the same time, there's enough out there for all of us. Let's work together too when we need to.
Yeah, no, fundamentally, I think a lot of times we don't give society. Well, let me say it like this. What gets talked about and exacerbated are the stories of that don't represent positive messages.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, what I've really found is most people are fairly giving. Most people would really give you the shirt off their back. Most people want to help you, me, and anyone else. People genuinely aren't as bad as we think they are. Society as a whole is a pretty good society.
Mm-hmm.
But what gets the most press and what gets talked about the most are the egregious stories and things that represent the opposite of positivity and benefits and things of that nature. And so, again, it's a constant reminder. Now, even on Twitter, you still have your trolls and
yeah.
that are going to find, it's like you'll make a tweet and it leaves our little corner of Twitter, then it hits the bigger, and then that's when it gets weird. So sometimes you have to mute certain conversations and dialogues just to, maintain your positive zen, if you will. But yeah, it's a phenomenal place to connect, 100%.
Awesome. Well, hey, we're getting pretty long on time here.
We could talk all day, but yeah, we better cut it down.
Yeah. Before we go, is there anything you're working on, or just how people can work with you, get in touch with you? Obviously, Twitter, the Urban CEO.
Yeah. You can also follow us on Instagram at Houston Vintage Homes. What we're doing. I'm excited about all the projects that we're doing. Building this duplex. We have down the street from this one, we're going to be building 3 patio style houses that are going to be a different iteration of this design. I'm working on an affordable courtyard development, which is part of missing middle housing, which I'm really excited about because in Houston we hadn't had a courtyard development project, new construction, in probably 50 or 60 years. Wow. And so I'm working in conjunction with, our Livable Places Committee here in Houston and our development council, if you will. And so that's a fun project. And so, yeah, just, I'm looking forward to doing more projects like that, coming to Kansas City and looking to do some with you guys.
That's right.
Someday soon in Kansas City.
No, there's no possibly. We will be.
Right, exactly. Alleviate that, right?
I'll show you a few amazing deals. You'd be like, damn, I should have been here a long time ago.
100%. I'm just excited about all of those things. There's so much to do. There's so much opportunity out here, and I have the energy and the excitement and the ideas. So, it's just about staying busy and making more things happen, having more impact.
Great. Well, hey, Tyron McDaniel, the Urban CEO, thank you so much for coming on and giving us some of your time and knowledge. And to everybody listening, thanks for listening to the Xplor Show. Be sure to like, follow, comment wherever you listen to podcasts or on YouTube. And if there's nothing else, we'll catch you on the next one.
See you, Tyron.